Namaste, everyone. It is me, Nina Sachs from Yoga Awakening Africa. And today I am here with my good friend. Well, I can't say good friend because we haven't really seen each other or spoken to each other in ages. But Adeline, so nice to have you here. I am so glad you can be here and that we can join in conversation. I know we have got loads to catch up on, lots to hear about. So yeah, tell me and everyone where you are now, because the last time we were chatting, you were in Zanzibar, and now you have gallivanted to the next part.
Yes, at the moment I am in La Gomera. I just arrived. It's an island of the Canary Islands. So actually the other side of Africa, right? Yes.
Love it. And I think the two of us, you especially, are a big traveler. You love traveling. I love traveling. And that's pretty much like how we met. So kind of like maybe just give everyone a quick update on like how we met, how that all came about, and what's been happening in your life with yoga since then.
Yeah, I remember we were in Nepal trekking, no, the Himalaya. And it was so cold, and I'm that beach person, and I suffered. And I brought my 5 kilo Manduka yoga mat with me because I thought I will, of course, do my yoga practice, which I maybe did once. Yeah, I suffered. And I remember that I thought this is a place to meditate and, peaceful in the mountains. And there were like so many tourists, and I was really frustrated with the experience, actually. But I met you, and I remember you in such a positive vibes. And yeah, I don't know, somehow you were, yeah, you kept in my memory. Yeah. And then I saw that you are in Africa, so I reconnected. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I remember, I think, yeah, I was busy trekking to Annapurna Base Camp. So somewhere along the route, I think that's where we were meeting. And I also thought, oh, it's going to be like a little bit of this, like a spiritual awakening. And when you
Yes.
step onto the track, you realize that it's anything but that, because there were just loads and loads of tourists. It was amazing and beautiful in the experience that it was, but it wasn't like this, where you think you're going to just be sitting and meditating and peaceful.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
but it's kind of like that's what yoga sometimes is as well. It's kind of like it takes you from like what you think it's going to be, and it throws you like a complete curveball, and it says, now just deal with this. Did you also feel
Yes.
that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. So, kind of like with you and your 5 kg Manduka yoga mat trekking up through the like Himalayas, what kind of like got you hooked on yoga, and why would you have lugged around a 5 kg mat on your travels?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is a lot of different reasons. No, I was a tango dancer and touring the world, already traveling with that for many, many years. And always in Buenos Aires and in a very Latino culture with like high heels and fancy clothes, and always working in a couple dependent. And then I went to India just because I needed to get out. I wanted something different. I wanted to relax, and I found Ashtanga yoga. No?
Mm-hmm.
And I did body work my whole life. I was from jazz dance to hip hop. I was teaching aerobics by the age of 16. I was always in body work. But the Ashtanga yoga, I felt something there, something different, something on a more subtle, on a higher layer, some body intelligence thing. I don't know, something was different than doing a fitness class.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fascinated by it, but I couldn't explain what is happening, but I felt something. And also my teacher was very traditional, and every morning it was the same. It was like a ritual. And I could feel that it is kind of involved in like a bigger something. And I felt so held in that setting because my day, every day was different. I was traveling, traveling, traveling. And there I arrived, it was the same thing. It was the opening prayer. It was the same practice. It was so reliable. And for me, it was so soothing and so grounding. Since that day, I just kept practicing 6 days a week. Okay, except some days in the Himalaya. But yeah, I was really fascinated by something I couldn't put in words. Yeah, but something deeper that was happening inside.
I love it, like when you're saying, because like when there's all this like vata imbalance, kind of like the air and the ether, and with like a lot of traveling and a lot of movement, there's always, you know, just a lot of stuff going on. And then when you find structure, and like you're saying, like ritual and structure, and it brings such a sense of grounding down into us who love to travel, and to kind of like have a practice, maybe like a set sequence or whatever it is, and having that regularity. Because I know like with the Vata, the three R's are like rest, regularity, and routine. Like if we can get that, you know, we can sort out any Vata imbalances. And I love what you're saying is like you obviously connected to something that was more than just the physical practice of yoga, but it permeated all the layers, like, you know, on the mental, emotional, kind of like intuitive, right down into that bliss body sheath. You didn't need to like analytically in your mind understand, you know, why this was happening, but actually just be in the space of yoga.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, and it was a very strict teacher, so I didn't expect that I like something that rigid and that, you know, like nearly like military style. But for me, exactly, always being an artist and all over the place, this was really like giving me ground.
So interesting. That's so interesting because, like, you know, with the artists, you know, and the dancing and being creative, we always think, oh, you know, like we just, you know, we go with the flow. Things just happen. And like you're saying, like this rigidity and just having the structure actually brought so much more. It sounds like clarity and groundedness to you. And I think sometimes that's what a lot of us need. We try and like oppose structure because I think we think of structure like rigidity, like laws and like by the government or institutions putting rules down for us, and it's not really that. It's more like the structure that like the universe or nature has for us, that is just inherent. It's kind of like when the morning starts, the, you know, the light starts, that's when we should be getting up. You know, when the sun sets, that's when we should be going to bed. Like they're just certain kind of like rules of the day that we should be abiding by. And it's, I think rules is a strong word, but it's just like if we can connect into that structure, it actually creates more flow and creativity for us, don't you think?
Yes, and I think it's maybe also about the balance, because a lot of people have lots of structure and they yearn for freedom and for creativity and for breaking out of the structure. But my life was the complete other side of the spectrum, right? So I think it's a lot about the balance. You need a little bit of both, right? You need to be held somehow. You need something where you can rest and meet yourself, and that is maybe even repetitive, so you can go deep. That is not always new and confusing. And yeah, you need both. I think this is what I find. Yeah.
And then to kind of like break out of that structure, what you're saying, and kind of like just experience what it's like to maybe be in the chaos a little, or like this universal potential, and how can I, you know, organize all the mayhem and everything that's around us. And I think we can probably kind of like break out of that structure a lot more easy and go with the flow when we know the practices that we need for ourselves that will bring us back into balance. Like you're saying, you know, or you know, you go back to your Ashtanga practice or a practice, yoga practice, especially kind of like, you know, when you're traveling, because you know that that's what's going to bring you back into balance.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of like with all of this and like where we've been, like from your traveling times, you know, I mean your dancing times, the tango and traveling there, and then with kind of like yoga and going into that, how do you like navigate yoga, teaching yoga, into kind of like your lifestyle, because you still have a very nomadic lifestyle, or not?
Yes, I don't have a home. I always travel, and I think the difference is I don't travel like a tourist. I travel for work, right? So I get invited to teach somewhere, and then I go and travel. And if I have time in between, of course, I go somewhere where I like it. But usually I travel for work. So it's not that I go somewhere and I'm in a hotel and I start to explore the place by myself, usually I go somewhere and there's a community waiting for me, and I already have people there who show me around, or I already have connections from people who know the place. So it's a bit a different style of traveling, I would say, you know. And yeah, sometimes things just come up completely unplanned. You know, I'm somewhere, somebody sees my practice, they have maybe a surf resort. Oh, are you teaching? Hey, can you teach here for a month? And I have the flexibility to say, yeah, I can do it. You know, a lot of things are not planned, actually, are not structured. Yes, they are very much into the flow. At least it was like this before the whole COVID thing, no? Then things rapidly changed. But before, it was a lot of flowing and yeah, having the space to be wherever I was asked to be for the moment. Yeah.
And just kind of listening to the calling. So kind of like where we reconnected was because 3-4 months ago you went to Zanzibar and you were teaching there. So how did that come about? And tell us about the experience of teaching in Zanzibar.
Yeah, it was funny because somebody told me about Zanzibar, and no, sometimes you hear something and there's like an extra curiosity, something like you could hear maybe another place, Honolulu, and it wouldn't buzz inside, but Zanzibar was like, And there was this website, Yoga Travel Jobs, and just for fun, I typed in Zanzibar and there was this announcement. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. I didn't expect it at all. And I was writing with the organizer, and she also dances tango. So that was just like, you know, if so many signs come together, it's like, yeah, I think I should go. That sounds really right. And I spent there 90 days. And it was in beautiful places with paradise view, the turquoise water, really, really, really wonderful. But I was mostly teaching the tourists, right? So I could feel usually I teach or I work with locals, but there I was teaching the tourists, which was new, and it was fun because it was people from all over the world, but there was it was a bit tricky to connect with the locals. It was like a bit a separate bubble. Yeah, if I can say so. And then in the end, especially 2 local guys, they came to class, and it was so wonderful for the group also, because for me, yoga it's union, right? It's bringing everything together. And it was beautiful to have them in the class. And I observed that the locals had so much body confidence, just the way how they walked, like such a relaxed, safe feeling in their, even the kids, no, mostly they were barefoot, and I felt them very, very grounded and very natural in their bodies, and very strong, balanced bodies. The kids were so independent and whatever, right? You wouldn't maybe see that in Germany, no, where I was born. They would be always like protected and kind of held on a leash and careful here, careful there. And yeah, I could feel that. It was really nice. The practice of these guys was amazing. And the whole group was always like, oh, I want to be able to do that as well. It was really fun.
Because I remember seeing one of your posts when you'd just gotten back home, and you'd written a post with regards to, you know, like how different it was noticing and seeing people like it kind of like in Zanzibar or kind of like in Tanzania, and how there was this kind of like openness, and there's like not more smiling, and then you get back to Germany and everyone's like, well, shut off and shut down, and not wanting to look at anyone or make eye contact.
Yes, yes. And so much of the, like, I just kind of had a little, I was just touching base. I took a plane just a few hours after, but just there I felt like so much tension in the shoulders, all the fear in the body, so much like seriousness and stress, and absolutely no space for spontaneity or it was weird to see. No more smile.
And it's interesting because I think sometimes we've got to experience that to remind ourselves about it, and also then when we take it into our teaching practice to, again, to make sure that the practice isn't as serious as people think it should be. Like, if we realize that there is maybe like a sense of, I don't know, hardness or stress, that actually we bring in that lightness, we bring in the spontaneity, we bring in the laughter. But I think if we only ever experience like the lightness, and we don't actually see people or group of people in this like seriousness, we forget about it. It's like you can't always be in the good, jolly space. Sometimes you've got to dip a little to be able to appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I know that there are probably like a lot of people listening in or going to be listening in who just are like looking at this idea, this lifestyle of like a yoga lifestyle, being able to like travel to all these exotic places and teach in these exotic places and have this like nomadic lifestyle. Kind of like what advice or insights do you maybe have for yoga teachers who are wanting to do that? Like how do you go about it, and is it for everyone, or like what do you need to have?
I get that question so often, like, oh my gosh, are you even able to support yourself? And I always feel that sometimes the people just want to hear it's not working, so they can stay in their safety zone, as if they look for a confirmation. I would say, like, no, I have some money in my background, or something. People ask me, do you even have a health insurance? And it's as if sometimes I feel like people wish that it's like, okay, she's doing this, but she doesn't even have this and that. Like, I don't know. I always get a strange gut feeling when that question comes up, right? I don't know what I can say. I think that, yeah, people often think you're so free and so courageous, and it's like this, whoa. But I mean, it comes along with a lot of stress also, and a lot of things to figure out. And the world is not at all global. There's not even a SIM card that works everywhere in the world. There's not a health insurance that works everywhere in the world. It's so disconnected, there are borders everywhere. And so much of my time, I need to just figure out stuff like that, that, yeah, it comes along with a lot of work also, and a lot of things to work through. And yeah, I think most of my jobs I didn't even plan in that way. It's like, somebody that knows somebody, or it's just happening. But I cannot say do this and that and that and it will work out. I think I just start with the first step, and then yeah, there's a flow. I cannot even describe it.
I think
it's maybe a bit crazy, but I don't really have a plan. It's more like I receive, I try to be as open as possible so I can see what is appearing, like, yeah, but I don't have a website where I do this, or I don't have it, no.
Yeah. And I think that's the lovely thing about you, Adeline, is that like you're just so honest with like where you're at and what the story is, and there's no like pretentiousness with regards to, oh, this is an amazing lifestyle and everyone should do it. Like you're very honest with regards to, like there are times when it's hard, like, shit hits the fan sometimes and you got to deal with it. And it's also probably not for someone who likes to be like super organized and have all the ducks in a row. Like you kind of got to be okay with, sometimes things are just not going to work out. And can you be okay with making alternate arrangements? If the flight's delayed, if, if something gets canceled or changed, or.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe, I don't know, there are some teachers that are very famous and they have very well super paid jobs that are like booked a year ahead. I think that exists as well, but I'm just a regular floating yoga teacher. And yeah, I would still always do it again. For me, it is, I love it. Yeah, but it's not just pure bliss. Yeah, it's also a lot of being flexible, a lot of letting go. I mean, I own one suitcase with some clothes. That's it, This is not for everybody.
No. And I think that's what I love about you, in the sense is that like it's not this like super famous yogi who's got her whole like support structure in place, and everyone doing everything for you. It's you. It's as you come, it's as you are. And it's kind of like, before you were chatting, you're like, oh my word, I'm like in the middle here. Where can I be sitting? Like, and it's like, that's just the way it is. It doesn't have to. Like you say, be the perfect backdrop, or, be the perfect lighting or the sound or the whatnot. It's just coming as you are, being honest with where you're at and what the story is. And I think so much of that is yoga itself. I love.
I think so too. A lot of this identification and letting go of things that are not, that don't really matter. Yeah, I think this is a lot. Just like for me also to not be a dancer anymore, like just to let go of this identification that I learned through yoga, but that was a big step also, right? If I'm not this, what am I? And like all these things, it's a lot of inner work.
And how did you navigate? Because this identity shift is a big thing. Like when we identify ourselves as someone, as a tango dancer, as a yoga teacher, as a mother, as the husband or the wife, as a businesswoman, like when we have these identities and then something shifts and we now have to change identities, like how did you navigate that? Like were there ups, were there downs? Was it an easy transition? How did you go through that?
Horrible. No, but I mean, I spent lots of time in India, and I think I had just amazing teachers and bits and pieces from everywhere, going to satsangs, going to meditation class, going to yoga class, reading, like trying to figure out what it is all about and then trying to apply it, like, as you say, in all honesty, what happens if I let go of all of this? And then slowly really trying to get to the deeper layers. I don't think there's a easier way. I don't think there is. I think it is connected with a lot of you want to hold on to it. You need to convince yourself. You need to somehow maybe intuit what can happen after, have like a sense of that freedom, that liberation that comes out of it somewhere. Otherwise you wouldn't probably do the process.
Because it is depth work. Like you do have to go down. You have to look at kind of like all the parts of your personality and being that you don't really want to admit, or that we've pushed away for a while, and just come up and face those fears or those challenges. And I think what it sounds like from you, and I think what helps a lot of people, is like when you're in that supportive environment and network, like you're saying, you had the teachers, you had the structure there in place who could guide you and support you to transition and mold you, into who you are now, to allow you to comfortably let go of the old identity that wasn't serving you anymore, and to kind of like step into a new idea, because we're always shifting our identities, we're always evolving and growing. So it's like, the Adeline who's here today is going to be changed, tomorrow as well. So we're always shifting and growing. But to take that step into, okay, who am I becoming next, and who am I growing into, when we've got that really strong support structure of people who've understood that, maybe gone through that before, it makes the process, I think, you still got to do the work, but I think you like you're saying, you see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know that it's easier in the sense because you know where you're heading to, the goal.
Exactly. I think I could intuit something there. I could smell something there. That's why,
It was fine to go on that nice journey. It's like Mulan. I don't know if I remember watching that like comic or whatever, years ago, where she went off to, go fight for what was right and whatnot. Like with most hero journeys, you always have to go into the depth, address the challenge that is there, and then face your fears, and that if you don't do that, you're really not going to be able to help others or solve the problem. And like you want to be successful at the end of the day. So it's kind of like the work has to get done.
Yeah. Actually, I think that this is like growing up in Germany, like without like unreligious, you know, and very hard science oriented, and without, let's say, a higher anything, or without magic. I think this is what also made me land in yoga, because there, like, even as a child, I felt like, no, that can't be everything, you know. I don't believe the world is just material or just mechanical. I always felt magic, but then it's super difficult in Germany to find it in that setting, you know. Like, I was told I'm stupid if I believe something that I cannot see or touch, you know. And then being in India, and yoga and the whole world is magical, right? Nothing needs to be measurable, explainable, repeatable, like all these hard science things. Like, you don't have to explain anybody what is the heart chakra or doubt the existence of it or something, you know. Like, it's just, yeah, I think this is where I felt, yeah, here is a bit more my home. And slowly I could start to, I could find, how can I say, yeah, what I intuitively felt is always there. I could finally meet that also in yoga. Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah.
That's very powerful in the sense that, yeah, meeting it where it's at.
Yeah.
And just intuitively knowing and trusting. I think that's a big one for people, is like sometimes we're in an environment or society or family structures or work environment or whatever the thing is, and they don't, and you just have like this feeling, you just know that something is different or needs to change, or you can feel something. And if you're constantly surrounded by people who don't get it, who don't understand that there is that spark of magic, who don't, like you say, you know, you don't need to explain or teach what the heart chakra does. You just need to feel into it. And I think if you're only surrounded by people who aren't in that space or who can't relate to that, it's really, really difficult to step into that empowering space in yourself. And sometimes we need to find that group, you know, if it's a yoga class or, I don't know, a knitting group or a volleyball club or whatever it is, but something that's going to let you be with people who will kind of like inspire you to address and step into that magic is really important.
Yeah. And I think this is why I am also so curious about yoga in Africa, because I imagine that Africa is a highly spiritual and magical place. And I think it could fit so interestingly with yoga and that whole philosophy, but then I don't know, no? So I'm so curious about your work. I imagine that, yeah, while if you do yoga in Germany and people maybe laugh at you, you believe in a heart chakra, and, you know, they make fun of you, that maybe doesn't happen, or there's a different access also to higher layers of the invisible world in Africa, no? I imagine, I don't know.
Very, very good question. I mean, that's also kind of like one, like we were chatting before we would, before I pushed record, you know, where we were chatting with regards to, you know, yoga and Yoga Awakening Africa, and how it was like a magazine in 2008. And the reason why I started it to kind of like bring all yoga teachers in Africa together and to share, you know, our love of Hatha yoga, of Iyengar yoga, of Ashtanga yoga, of Kundalini yoga, Satyananda, like all the yogas, like let's all come together as yoga teachers and share what we've learned. You know, let's join forces and see kind of like what it is. Because I was really interested as well, like you say, like how can these practices where there's a layer of energy, like how does that operate in our, you know, in our country, in the continent? And then kind of like the magazine dwindled, and then it turned into a blog where we were sharing events in South Africa. And now it's kind of like, you know, into my coaching page where I'm helping yoga teachers and yoga lovers take their positive energy and just really transform that into really long-lasting resilience. Because I think that's important. Like in Africa, I think people here are so resilient, but they've had to be resilient from like a negative sense. Like they've had to find the strength because there's so much trauma. There's always so much negativity going on with regards to, you know, violence. And yeah, I mean, I don't need to go into it, but kind of like we always think of resilience in that way. And I kind of think, well, let's use the positivity and build positive resilience in Africa. So that's kind of like the shift that I'm wanting to see and experience, because as much as there's this, I don't know, not necessarily like a dark cloud over Africa, but there is a heaviness with regards to, like, there's a lot of depth, and there's a lot of like a lotus flower, kind of like you got to go into that space, that depth, to allow the beauty to be out there. And I think that's very much what Africa is to me. It's like that lotus flower where there is all this murkiness underneath there. There's so much confusion, there's so much chaos, there's a lot of trauma, but from that, people have managed to kind of like grow and evolve. And like you're saying, you go to Zanzibar and you see, how people are light and happy, and there is this beauty that comes out of that as well. So to kind of like me, that's how I see Africa, and I'd love to see it growing. I know when I was because I spent a tiny amount of time in Kenya, like there's a lot of yoga happening in Kenya as well. In Tanzania, I was teaching for a little while in Dar es Salaam, and taking that into the hospitals, like, and just getting, like, people are slowly getting more and more used to it, hearing about it, incorporating it. There's always like a little bit of a hesitation, I find. But then when people experience it within themselves, and especially the yoga nidra, the relaxation, it's like, then it's like that heart chakra where it just speaks to them. Like, you don't need to use words to explain what yoga is. They just get it and they realize, like, this makes them feel good, and this is what they want more of. So I think it's still like very much in its infinite stages, and I'm super curious to see how it's going to expand, through all levels, from high, high earners right down, to, the random guy, on the street or on his farm. Like, how is yoga and the teachings, how's that going to permeate through Africa?
Yeah, I'm curious. I want to stay connected to that.
Exactly. You'll have to come back and do more teaching and find a new place to hang out.
Yes.
So,
yes, it's in the planning. Yes.
Love it. Adeline, it is always I don't know, I love like connecting with yogis and chatting, and I love following you and seeing your adventures and what you get up to. I can never like keep track of where you are and what you're doing, but it always looks fantastic, and I know that you do it because your heart's in it, and that you're connected with that universal consciousness, in the sense just allowing it to flow through you and take you to where you need to be, and the teachings that you're needing to share. So thank you for coming on today and having a conversation with me.
Thank you.
What I wanted to ask, what are you excited about for 2023, the new year? What are you looking forward to before we sign off?
That's a very good question. I am looking forward to a bit more time to myself, because I had a lot of running and a lot of giving energy out, and I feel it's time for a bit more quietness to myself, and I'm in a good place for that now. I feel I arrived here, I was like, oh my God, La Gomera is so quiet. Zanzibar was so alive and so many people everywhere, and I just realized when I came here, I think this is what I was teaching so much, and I feel I want to recharge also, like more alone time again, more doing my own process again, spend more time with that and not having so much output all the time. Yes.
I love what you're saying, because in a sense it's also like the seasons. Like, we can't always be in the spring or summer phase where there's like output and activity and fun and like high energy. Sometimes we need to go into that autumn where we're winding down, the winter phase where it's like really quiet within and going kind of like into that depth journey, because
Yeah.
we need to transition through all the seasons within ourselves. We can't just be like output, output, output the whole time. So I'm so
Yes.
glad that you bring that up, because I think people don't often want to admit that, they need to go in and recharge because they want to be seen to the world to be doing stuff. So thank you for sharing that. That was
Yeah.
lovely. Lovely.
Yeah.
Good.
So good to see you.
Lovely to be seen and so good to see you as well. And connecting again soon. Namaste.
Namaste.